Our first viewer writes, saying, is Greg suggesting that people would be most happy by choosing close friends and romantic partners based purely upon a person's core values, while being careful that we're not choosing them simply because their current actions, some of which may be inconvenient for them and not truly related to their core values, are making us feel good? Oh no, I'm not saying that at all. If we were to now, we unconditionally love anybody, but if we were to choose as our best friends and romantic partners just pretty much anybody, even people who had similar values, we'd find that we were limiting somewhat our ability to be happy. If that were not true, for example, I could marry a 17-year-old or a 95-year-old who was truthful and simply believed in the principles of real love. But I would find enough dissimilarities marrying somebody who wasn't also capable of participating with me in other things that would be a distraction. So what I'm suggesting is that for close friends and romantic partners, we do look for what will also maximize our own happiness. Now, don't get confused. This isn't like imitation love, where you say, well, you know, I'm just looking for somebody who's going to make me feel good temporarily. I am saying, however, that some of the qualities that I would look for in a permanent partner would be similar to those that I'd be looking for if my life were based on imitation love. As long as let's say I've got 10 people who are capable of being truthful, 10 people who are interested in improving their ability to be unconditionally loving. I wouldn't just throw a dart at a board and randomly pick one of those 10. For example, I would personally, for a romantic partner, and it may sound silly, but it's not, because it kind of illustrates the principle that I'm talking about. I would disqualify 5 of them right off because they were men. I'm not gay. I'm not interested in having a male romantic partner, so that would eliminate 5 people. So now I'm left with 5 who are women. Well, I'm not going to just randomly select from them. Like I said earlier, what if, you know, one of them is 17? I'm not interested in dating my granddaughter. What if one of them speaks Farsi? They're from Iran, and that's all. The point is that you want to look for somebody who not only can be truthful and express unconditional love, but who, well, is fun. Now, if fun is all I'm looking for, then we're talking about the realms of imitation love. But I'm looking for somebody who can experience real love with me and also has, at least some other interesting qualities. Those qualities aren't essential. Like, for example, I enjoy playing the piano. I don't have to have somebody who plays the piano, but I would need somebody who, like, spoke English, was a woman, probably lived in the same, least continent. You know, it gets difficult the further away people are and the more different their culture is. And then, lastly, I'd be looking for somebody who had the ability to, or not really so much lastly, almost firstly, somebody who was capable of also loving unconditionally. Now, this can sound tricky. It's really not. The difference between looking for a real love partner and not is huge. Some of the words may sound similar. I'm not looking for somebody who will love me in return. That would be trading. I'm looking for somebody who could love me also. If I'm looking for somebody who can love me in return, then on the occasions that she couldn't, we'd have a problem. I would understand that there would be times when she couldn't, but it would be silly not to look for a partner who can be unconditionally loving and also add to my own happiness. Otherwise, I'm in a position of just giving all the time. And, you know, that's kind of the whole idea of partnership. One of you gets tired, the other picks up the slack. It's been, you know, one of the saving graces of my present marriage with Donna that we pretty much do these instant assessments of each other. How tired are you? How worn out? And if one of us is tireder than the other one just immediately takes his or her needs and just sets them down and addresses the needs of the person who needs it most. Then eventually the other person becomes capable of returning back to a loving state. For a partner, you really want somebody like that. You want somebody who can help share the load. Here, it may have been a longer answer than you were looking for. Here's somebody who says, I work with a man who often stops by my cubicle and talks to me. And when he does that, I feel trapped because he talks on and on and on, and he's nice, so I don't want to turn him away, but I have work to do, and I'm not always particularly interested in what he's talking about. But I feel trapped. I feel like I can't say anything. So how do I handle this? Again, it's about love. It's not about some technique that we employ at the office, as though the office somehow were different from everywhere else. It's not. People need to feel unconditionally loved every place, so you can apply the same principles there. Every gift is really about love. Time, attention, affection, whatever. And every true gift is freely given. So it's really only loving on your part when you give unconditionally, freely, the time, attention, the listening ear, the energy, the whatever it is that you give this guy who drops by. And if you're not giving it freely, well, it ain't no gift. And so why bother? It'll end up exhausting you. He's not going to really feel it. People can deep down sense when we're paying attention less. Now, like this guy, he's desperate for attention, so even when you kind of tune out, a half listening ear is better than none at all, and so he stays there and jabbers at you. I'm suggesting that you think about your being loving, which does not mean, and this is such a misconception, if you're being loving, you do not have to give him what he needs or even wants. No, you give him what you can freely give. So let's say that he drops by and you listen to his story for 85 seconds. And at that point you realize any number of things. I have to get back to work. I'm not really interested in this story. I'm wearing out. I find myself going, oh my gosh, when is this story going to end? When that happens, then you tell him exactly when the gift is over. That's what makes it an unconditional gift. If you keep listening, you're the fool. So when you get tired, for whatever reason, and you don't have to explain your reason, and your reason doesn't have to be justifiable in the eyes of anybody else. So you might say something like this. Whether you say these words isn't important. It's really the attitude. Fred, thanks for stopping by. I've really enjoyed your visit or conversation or story or whatever it is. And, you know, I'd love to hear more. But I can't. I've got to get back to work. So I'll talk to you later. I don't know how you can be much more clear than that. I'm grateful, enjoyed talking to you, love it. In other words, I enjoyed giving you this gift of my time, although that's not what you would say. And now I'm done, and I have to get back to work. And so I will talk to you later. Not very many people who aren't going to understand the meaning of I'll talk to you later. It means goodbye, get out. And then you turn back to your work. And should he keep talking, because yes, I've known people who will do that too, you go right back to your typing and he's still talking. Then you just even raise your hand and look up and say, again, loved having you here, really enjoyed it, I'll talk to you later, but I really have to do this. And whatever it is that you're turning back to doesn't have to be pressing. If it was turning back to watch grass grow, that would be enough reason. No kidding. You don't have to justify your decision to stop giving a gift. It's your gift to give. And other people don't have the right to tell you what to give. We feel such pressure, don't we? All our lives we've had these mandatory gifts. My goodness. You know, you get a wedding gift and and your mother and mother-in-law are pounding you and going, have you sent out your thank you cards? Have you? Oh my goodness, all the things we feel obligated to do. Let's see, we have a question here. I'm interviewing for a new job, and I see how I've made many mistakes shooting my mouth off on former jobs. How much truth should I tell in an interview? I would recommend that you actually read Real Love in the Workplace, because there's an entire section there on how to interview a prospective employee, how to be a prospective employee, what to say. The kind of as a rule of thumb, I suggest to people that they be relaxed. Now, I realize a job interview is hardly a naturally relaxing environment, but if you, for example, go by a roughly 2-to-1 rule, it's not written in the workplace book and it's not a hard and fast rule, but if you describe 2 great things about yourself, I do this and I do this well, and then at a ratio of roughly 2-to-1, you throw in something that you don't do as well. You say, I do this and I do this. I find it, sometimes difficult to offer my opinion over the opinion of other people once they've spoken. That's, probably a confidence thing, and it's something that I'm working on. And then you illustrate how you've worked on it in your last job. So confidence is something I've had difficulty with, but in my last job, when they were passing out assignments to do blank, I volunteered to take an assignment that I thought would scare me to death, and I'll be darned if it didn't help to build my confidence. So look what I just did. They're looking to learn about who you are. If you trick an employer, you posture, you pose, you pretend, you put it on to win their approval. Most people can sense that anyway, and they're not going to hire you because they're going to see you as dishonest. But let's say you succeed. Let's say you succeed in selling yourself to your employer as something other than what you are, and they're convinced that you can do jobs A, B, C, D, and E. And it turns out that you can only really do A and B. They're going to be pretty annoyed with you when they find out that you can't do C, D, and E. No kidding. So it's very useful to tell an employer, gosh, I do this and this great. This I'm working on. And if it turns out that that's exactly the quality they were looking for in an employee, well, darling, you didn't want that job anyway. It was going to end up being nothing but an endless frustration. And then tell them how you're working on it. Just be natural. Now, I would suggest that you use the workplace book and that you get somebody in the Real Love community, or just as well, some hard-nosed, hard-bitten, experienced supervisor or employer who has hired a lot of people, and give you an interview. Simulate one so that you can see how you respond. You'll learn a lot from that. Here's a viewer who says, my best friend has now been officially divorced, as opposed to unofficially divorced, for almost 2 months from her second marriage. When she moved away from her husband, she started spending a lot of time with a man from her church. Well, you can't go wrong there. Pick somebody from your church and they'll always be right. I'm just teasing. She was suddenly caught up in this man being her boyfriend. Well, understandable. You leave one relationship and the gap is big. We want to fill it with something, and we tend to fill it with another relationship, which is, of course, almost always the worst thing we can do. Obviously, she's very much in a rush to be in a relationship, and she says that she's never felt like this with anyone before. She says she can be the good, bad, and ugly with this guy, and he accepts her completely, and she has even brought up marriage to him. I've lost track. I'd be a rich guy if I only got $100 for every person who's told me, oh man, this guy or this girl is so different from all the others. And I'm thinking, no, they're not. And I often say that. They say, well, how do you know? Because you're the same person. You haven't really done your own personal work around telling the truth and feeling unconditionally loved and unconditionally loving. And so you being the same, you're going to attract a partner who's almost identical to your first one. I sat and I talked to a couple one day. I'm not exaggerating. I'm not making this up. And they were talking about getting divorced. And, and I said, well, if you do, you're just going to repeat the same pattern you've repeated in the past. And they had both been married and divorced. Married 8 times, divorced 8 times. Not sure, but pretty sure divorced 8 times. We keep marrying the same person with a different name. And it's because of past patterns. It's because of familiarity. Even though we hate what happens in those relationships, we're familiar with that smell, that feel, that combination of imitation love. When we see it, we can see it across the street, and we go, yeah, there's something about that that's familiar. Unfortunately, we don't do that consciously. And if it turns out that that person has a different cologne, parts their hair a different way, tells different jokes, it's the same person, but we are just fascinated by that 2% difference that they are from the last one. And so we end up walking just right into the jaws of death. So, yeah, I get it that the romance seems different. And there's nothing wrong with the rush of imitation love. Really. Most real love relationships begin with at least some of that rush, that, I like your skin. I like the way you talk to me. It's exciting. No problem. That's really natural. But then, if we're wise, we hang on before we make a commitment to that person until we see what's really there. And that takes time. Now, you brought up something that sounds like real love. It says that she says that she can be the whatever with this guy. Good, bad, ugly, and he'll accept her completely. Well, that sounds sweet and all, but when you're in the midst of that initial romance, luster, glowy stage of dating, you don't really let the other person see your ugliness. You don't. You're having too much fun. So, she says she's totally me ugly, maybe, but telling him about her ugly side and being ugly are different. And that usually takes a while before we relax enough to be our natural stupid selves. So it's a little doubtful that there's almost no chance this guy's seeing who she really is. Besides, it matters less that he can accept her with her flaws at this early stage than that he can tell the truth about himself. I've seen many relationships fall into this trap. She says, well, but I can say anything, and he accepts me. Great. Does he reciprocate? Does he tell you the truth about him? Have you said, what happened to your last 4 relationships? Why did they end? And if he responds, oh, well, because, she was this, and the one before that, she was terrible, and the one before that was terrible, and one before, well, honey, you're going to be next. So it's really important to ask enough questions of this guy that you can discover who he is. I highly recommend that people, before they get past the 3rd date, by 3 dates, you're not kidding around, unless you're 16. So it's time to ask the hard questions. If you can't say to a guy after the 2nd or 3rd date, hey, there's this book I want you to read, and you read Real Love and Dating together, and you get to the pages where it says, here are questions to ask your partner. Well, dang, honey, it's a gift, it's a meal on a platter. Ask those questions and allow yourself to be asked the same questions in return. You'll tend to learn quite a bit about your partner. You continue. She's supposed to be coming here Thursday night for the weekend, and I'm really apprehensive. But I don't agree with this decision. I'm not ready to meet him yet. Part of me is really considering rescheduling this weekend when the relationship isn't so new and so entrenched in all the imitation and even more when I can be truly supportive and loving. I obviously cannot do that at this moment, and I don't want the weekend to be uncomfortable or to say things that are judgmental and potentially hurtful. Well, understand that the way you're saying it here, you may not mean it this way, but yeah, actually you probably do, because we don't pick words randomly. You're annoyed with her, that she won't listen. You're annoyed that well, actually you said that. I'm feeling irritable because she won't listen to me. And you're irritated that she's picked this particular guy. You know, honey, that's pretty arrogant. Love you, but it is. You know, if somebody that I know and love chooses to make a stupid mistake, oh, certainly I can say, have you considered this? Have you thought about this? In my experience, this happens. Would you like to read a book? I could say all that to a good friend. But then if my good friend says, you know, I'm still just head over heels in love with this person, well, you know, just have at it, honey, because you're not going to get in their way. And it's really not my right to decide what somebody should or should not do. I don't know whether they're going to learn from this experience. It might be the best thing in the world for them, even if it's not the right person for them. So it's pretty arrogant for me to be annoyed that somebody's making a decision, even one of my own kids. So you do get to ask her questions about him. That's okay. Have you considered this? Have you asked him this questions? But being irritated, not very effective. This viewer says, I'm dating and seeking a match. One of my possible partners is a very loving, nurturing, and kind man. I've been around him on and off for a year now, and he's pretty much this way. I think it's meant to be this way, colon. And then the way follows. He hasn't been responsible with his money. He's overweight, he's unfit, and has displayed excessive drinking on occasion in my company. He's asked if I'd be interested in having a relationship with him. It's confusing to me because he can be so kind, nurturing, and loving. I told him my concerns, and now he says that he will change, which is not what I was looking for. Do people change? Should I walk away? Am I being selfish, as it is so nice to have somebody love me the way he does when I thought we were just being friends? If you were married to this guy, I would say, oh, by all means, let's talk about, you know, what you could do about his excessive drinking, the weight, his irresponsibility, all that kind of stuff. You have to decide, would I be willing to be in a long-term relationship with this guy if none of those qualities changed? None. Zero. He continued to excessively drink, continued to overeat, was irresponsible. Would you want to be in a lifetime relationship with him if he stayed just like that? If the answer is no, then you do not begin one. Craziness if you do. Now, if you want to introduce him to real love, and the guy learns about it, starts attending a real love group, interacts with people online, gets a coach for himself, for example, and he says, oh my gosh, I drink too much, and I drink to get rid of my pain. I'm not active enough. I'm not fit. I've been completely irresponsible with money. And then you watch him over a period of, I don't know, a year or whatever, to see if his lack of responsibility and so on improve. Well then, okay. But you'd be watching him from afar. You'd already be dating and looking for another partner. You would just be introducing to him the opportunity to change so that he can be happier. Not, I'll emphasize that in case you missed it, N-O-T, not, so that he will change so that he can become your partner. Oh man, kiss of death, sweetie. I mean, the old, I think I'll be able to change the little things that I don't like. That's how marriages end. It's like ending your marriage before you start it. So I know it's flattering, you know, to have somebody say, oh wow, I like you, I'd like to be in a relationship. Yeah, that's fun. But you got to decide what you can live with for all the rest of your life. And it's like I was talking about at the top of the video chat. We want to pick a partner who will, at the very least, not overall detract from our happiness. And if possible, actually add to it. Be able to be a partner, not somebody we have to drag along behind the bus for the rest of our lives, which is what a great number of people do. How boring is that? I mean, it's not just boring, it eventually just exhausts you, can just wear you out. This viewer is, actually, this is a continuation of the question, not the last question, the one before that, where she was saying, my girlfriend, you know, has decided to be in a relationship with this guy, remember, not long after the divorce, and she really likes this guy, and I think she's just an idiot. So that's the Cliff Notes short version. So she continues, or you continue. She's here now, so the girlfriend, who's in a relationship with this guy that you don't approve of, is actually here at your house. And apparently she had talked to the boyfriend and let him know that I was being selfish. Don't you love honest friends? And that I just wanted to spend time with her this weekend, which, by the way, is fine. You're a girl that you haven't seen in a long time, comes over to your house. She has a boyfriend, but she comes over to your house to spend time with you. You haven't seen her for a long time. You decide, I don't want to share the weekend with this guy who I don't even especially like. I would prefer to spend the weekend with you. There is nothing wrong with stating that. Is it potentially selfish? Maybe. But so what? I prefer chocolate ice cream to vanilla. Is it selfish of me to have that desire? Well, I suppose a little bit. It limits the people who can give me ice cream in some situations. But you get to have selfish preferences. You prefer to spend it with your girlfriend. Okay. It's not like you said, it's not like you invited them both over and then threw him out. You said to her, great, I'd like to have you over. I would prefer that you come over without him. Now it's up to her whether she comes over to your house or she stays with him. It's her choice. It's not like you controlled her. We often have this fear that if we voice a preference, oh, heaven forbid, and we were taught this by our moms and dads and others, you know, we don't get to have an opinion different from theirs. Yeah, you really do. And you're not, you didn't control her. You just told her, here's the choice that I can live with. She decided to come over. You said it was just a girls' weekend. All true, especially about the selfish aspect. Turns out that you really were being selfish because of your attitude of irritation. But that's okay. You don't have to suddenly become loving because somebody needs you to be. You continue. She was on and off the phone with him all day yesterday. I can almost hear the irritation in your voice as you say that. Considering where I've been coming from about all this, I'm surprised that it didn't bother me. Oh, bless your heart. Here I'd assumed that it was, but you say it didn't. I suppose it's because she made it a point not to stay on the phone with him for long stretches at a time while we were out goofing around. And that was thoughtful on her part because she knows that I'm not able to be extremely loving toward him right now. Well, see, this is how it works out when you just have your preferences and you're around people who can support and love you. You clearly state that you're not loving enough to accept her boyfriend. Okay. Is it selfish on your part not to accept a choice she's made? Yes. But you see it. And as long as you see it, it's something that you can work on. So, bless you. And then as she pointed out and asked me, so she talked to me about her decision to be with him, and I don't really support the decision, but nonetheless we enjoyed our time to get together. Then last night at 10 p.m., we get a knock on the doorway. We were watching a movie, and there was the boyfriend, her boyfriend, at my door, uninvited. I was more in shock, and my husband was angry. To him, here was a perfect stranger at his house at 10 p.m. that was not invited. Knowing that he had left earlier in the day for a 2-hour drive to arrive at our house when he knew that he was not welcome was just crazy to me. Now, I really don't like this guy. You really do have a little bit of an irritation problem with this guy, but yeah, it's okay. You see it. I'm not saying it's okay to be irritated. I'm just saying you get it, so you don't need a lecture. I don't know how not to be angry about this when, to me, his visit to my home was very invasive and not okay. All right, separate issues. First, his showing up at your door. Was that a thoughtful, considerate, and selfless thing to do? No. He had to be just like on crack. You don't decide that you're going to show up at somebody's house at 10 p.m. when they haven't invited you, and after your girlfriend has said that you specifically are not wanted at the place. He's one of these people who is so intrusive that he figures that if he just shows up, that you'll have no choice but to let him in. And that works 99 times out of 100. You just show up at somebody's house and they'll be so uncomfortable, they'll let you in. And people like this actually know that, so they do it. Now, but your anger, that's a problem. The fact that he shows up, not okay. But then you get irritated, and it keeps coming up over and over in your question here. That will make you a prisoner to him. So is it possible to actually make a choice here about his being at your door without being angry? Oh, heck yeah. And we'll get to that in a second. You said he kept telling her that he wanted to meet me, which is frankly tough. I mean, you told him you didn't want to. Just because somebody wants a thing doesn't mean you have to give it to them. That's not what love is. That's codependence. Because I was important to her, and then he pulls this. Kind of makes me crazy. Let's see. Blah, blah, blah. Anyway, you go on and talk a little bit more about that because you're actually kind of annoyed, and so the more annoyed we get, the more we tend to talk. All right, so we get that the anger is selfish, but you don't have to put up with his sudden visit. You feel obligated because there he is at your doorstep at 10 p.m. and he's 2 hours away from home, and you feel like, oh, well, now I have to allow this to happen. No, you don't. So what can you do? You leave him at the door. He says, can I come in? And you say, no. And it's raining outside. I'll be darned. He's the one who chose to come to your door in the rain. That's not your problem. I mean it. It sounds mean, but, you know, just because people are rude and intrusive doesn't mean you have to allow that behavior. If we do, it tends to keep happening to us. So you leave him out there in the dark, in the rain, with the snow and the wolves biting at his heels. And you say, I'll be right back. You shut the door. You go find your girlfriend. And you say something like this. Not exactly, but you say, you know, I'm just not loving enough right now to entertain somebody that I had not planned on, especially when I made it clear that I didn't want him here while you were here. I wanted your attention. And, you know, part of it may be selfish on my part and unkind, but there it is. But whatever the reason, I choose not to be with him this evening. That's my choice. And I get to make that choice because, let me think, this is my house. So I had planned on spending the evening with you. This is you talking to your girlfriend. So what do you want? We have a number of choices here now. He can stand out in the rain and freeze and let the wolves eat him. Or you can go to the door and turn him away and tell him to go home. Or you could go home with him if you feel sufficiently strong about him being at the front door in the cold. Then I would understand if you went home with him now. Or you can allow me to go and tell him that he has to go. But one of his choices is not coming in here. We are not compelled to give people what they demand. So now you're free. You don't feel trapped by the situation. You don't feel trapped by him. You don't feel trapped by her. You would just, however, as you make your decision not to have him with you, you would have to live with the possibility that she might choose to leave you and to go spend the rest of the weekend or week or whatever time you're talking about here with him. Every choice has a price, and you're choosing not to have him there might result in your losing the presence of your girlfriend. Just something to think about. Not something to compel you to let him in. This viewer says, my friend was really upset because during our Real Love group meeting, several of us went down the path of asking about details. I assume details about what she was saying. She tried to redirect the conversation, but it didn't work. 12-step groups have the rule of no crosstalk, but we don't. and none of us is perfect. It seems like we're expecting each other not to use any getting and protecting behaviors ever. What's realistic for a real love group? Having no getting and protecting behaviors during the group, and what should we do when it happens? Oh, anybody who expects a real love group to run perfectly is just nuts. I mean, that's not going to happen. None of us is perfect. I don't do this perfectly. So when you go to a group, what we're doing is we're just creating an opportunity where we can be truthful, and where we have certainly increased odds of being accepted unconditionally. So let's say that somebody who's used to 12-step meetings says, I hate my boyfriend, and I hate everybody in the world, and I feel victimized by everybody, and I wish everybody would just die so that I could be happy. In other words, they're just being classic victim. And then they say, and then they sit down. And you start to ask questions so that you can kind of explore the victimhood and help this person see that they're being held captive by their feeling of being victimized. And the person, I'm just making this up because I wasn't there, but the person says, you know, I just don't want to get into the details. Okay, so what would you like? I would not hesitate to do that. I'd say, all right, if you don't want to be asked questions about the details, what would you like from us? Well, I just want you to listen. I just want to say my piece and be done. Well, okay. I'd say, no problem. Now, the likelihood that they'll actually benefit from just speaking, sitting down, and entertaining no questions is very small, because they're not really telling the truth. When people act like victims, for example, what they're trying to get is sympathy. There's no way that they're going to feel unconditionally loved. And I would allow somebody to do that in a meeting, no problem. I would allow them to do it in the next meeting. But if somebody did it 3 meetings in a row, where all they wanted to do was come in and talk and just sit down and have nobody ask them any questions, or to ask questions that are only flawlessly loving, then, you know, about the 3rd time or so, I'd say, hey, why are you here? What's your goal? I'd ask them. Well, I just came here to tell the truth. Well, I get it, and you're not. So I'm not telling you that you have to do it differently, but I am saying that this is a place where people do talk about what you say. We've discovered that it's not enough for people just to speak their piece and say, hello, I'm Fred, I'm an alcoholic, I've been sober for 3 months, thank you, and sit down. We've discovered that that's insufficient. That most of us, as in, 99% of us, are sufficiently blind to our getting and protecting behaviors that we need help seeing them, which is why people in the group are asking you questions. Now, could it be that sometimes they ask too many questions, that they get too much into the details? Yeah. Could it even be that they use their own getting and protecting behaviors as they do it? In other words, being critical or enabling or judgmental or irritated? Yeah, could be. And when that comes up, hopefully somebody else in the group will be wise enough to say, yeah, that might be a little harsh. Or, I have almost never in a group corrected somebody who was attempting to be a wise man. And so let's say that a wise man is being judgmental, critical, gets into the details. I wait till that wise man is done, assuming it doesn't take too long, and then I simply address the person who spoke and attempt to help them tell a little bit more truth about themselves to the point that they feel loved. In other words, I be the wise person without correcting the other one. There's no reason to. You just be a wise man yourself. That's all they need. Part 2 of this. The upset person is a coach. And the speaker was being asked about the details. And as a group, we were all wrong. Oh, so correct me if I misunderstand you here. But so, in other words, you are all asking details, I assume, for the benefit of the person who is speaking. And the coach was saying, so am I getting it right that they weren't going into too much details?
They were having too much fun with the details.
Oh, so you all were having too much fun with the details. And then the coach got upset. Well, okay, yeah, sometimes we can get, I've seen many groups do that. You get into the details and it just gets to be a hoot. You know, you ask about this and that and people are laughing, and sometimes people are running off about the, basketball game or whatever. And then what the coach does is just, the coach doesn't criticize the people who are incorrectly being wise men. I've been in many groups where the people were just off on a tangent so far that they were on a different planet. I don't ever say to people, now, you all are off on a tangent. You all need to stop that now. I just ignore what's being said and turn to the person who is trying to be heard and trying to feel loved and simply address them as though all the distractions didn't exist. Does that make sense? So you're trying to tell me something about your life and other people are getting lost in the details. You say, when I lived in Louisville, and then somebody says, I lived in Louisville too. I see that happen all the time. Oh, I knew somebody from Louisville too. They're all just nuts in Louisville. Well, that's an example of getting into details that are just absurd. And so rather than tell people, that's just really not helping, I just ignore them. I pretend as though they had not spoken, and I say to the person who's speaking, so tell me more about what your interaction with your boyfriend was like, or whatever it is that they're talking about. And so then your boyfriend did this and this. You just get to the salient points, the important ones, and you say, so really what you were hearing from your boyfriend was, I don't care about you. How'd that feel? And how many times in your life has that happened where you didn't feel cared about? See, notice, I'm engaging the person who's the speaker and pretending that there's only one wise man in the person, one wise person in the room, in this case, me. I would only do that if everybody else in the room was off on a flight of fancy. But I don't need to correct them. The best way to teach them anyway is to show them what being a wise man is. Does that make sense? Oh, then this is part 3. You only get 2 parts to a question, so forget it. No, you get to do as much, whatever you want. Part 3 is, the coach stormed out of the group. Should we do anything now? Maybe. But if the coach is having a fit, obviously the coach has got to work something out, huh? Obviously the coach is trying to control you, obviously, because if I'm not trying to control you and you don't do what I want, it's not upsetting. If I am trying to control you, then when you don't do what I want, then I'm going to have a little fit. So do you need to do anything about the coach? Oh, it might be thoughtful. After a couple of days, I would not stop her from leaving. No, people learn from having their fits. They learn from doing things wrong. They learn from, being petulant and difficult. Let her leave. Then in a couple of days, you might call him. You didn't say, I don't think. And say, so it just looked like things weren't working for you, the other night in our meeting, and give her an opportunity to talk about it. And if she then attempts to, run over you because she's a coach and knows everything, then you just say, so are you suggesting that the people in the group made you angry? I'm just asking because that would be a dangerous assumption, dangerous assertion, claim. So you give her an opportunity to tell the truth. And then if she comes back to the group, oh, no mercy, honey. If somebody's going to stomp out of group and then come back to group, when you walk in the door at group, you're saying that you're willing to tell the truth about yourself. And if you don't say anything, you're also declaring, even though you didn't realize it, you are, because you're coming to a wise man group, a real love group. If you can't tell the truth about yourself, you're essentially giving everybody in the room permission to ask you about the truth. So if she comes back in the room and just sits down like nothing happened, say something. Say, do you want to talk about how you walked out of the group last Sunday? Now, I wouldn't phrase it like, so do you want to talk about how you were a big baby and sucked your thumb last Sunday? That's not going to work out, because that's not truth-telling, that's accusing. That's judgment. And then give her a chance to talk about it. And then if she says, well, I don't want to talk about it. Okay, so if you don't want to talk about it, what is your goal in being here? in a real love group, which is exactly for the purpose that I just proposed. You see? You don't get upset about it. You don't try to make her not upset. You don't cater to her fit, nor do you provoke her. It's all about truth-telling and feeling unconditionally loved. When we get that, all the details about how to run a group become, wow, much easier. Let me know if that helps. This next viewer says, I'm a massage practitioner. I've been practicing for quite a few years now, and last week I had some family members, my biological dad and his wife, who I'm close with and get along with well, call and leave a message on my voicemail about scheduling a massage and wanting a family discount. I can see this coming. I have to admit that that request irritates and angers me. Yet I'm not comfortable enough to just call and tell them something along the line that if I choose to offer a family discount, great, but when it's being asked of me, it makes me feel like it's a demand, and then I find myself not wanting to do anything for them. At this point, I have not returned their call because I'm not sure how to respond. It was amusing in the message because it was stated to me that they had a proposition for me. I guess it was to work at the discounted price, not really sure, and that they would pay me. Anything you have to say would be appreciated. Okay. The reason you're feeling irritated, honey, is that you have an expectation of them just like they have one of you. So you need to see that you're both doing a similar thing, although, you know, in a different way, sure, and from a different approach, but it's really the same deal. Families have these inordinate expectations of each other. Oh my goodness, we expect our families to love us, be considerate, support us, give us money, blah, 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 blah. And you expect that at least your family would be understanding of the training that you put into this and support you in it to the point where they would pay you fully for getting a massage. Okay, I understand your expectation, and it's wrong. Expectations will just screw us every time, darling. So if you want to have an expectation, if you insist on it, a more reasonable expectation would be this. Families feel like they've been doing stuff for us all our lives, even if it was minimal and poorly done. They have this feeling of, it's usually kind of a one-way sense of obligation. I'm your brother, and so I'm entitled for you to blank. And that's what they're doing with you. So if you want to have a reasonable expectation, it would be that family members will use and abuse you, because that's, you know, on the whole, what family members do. There's sometimes some love thrown in, but whew, the expectations we have of each other. And that's bolstered by societal expectations, you know, that families will be close-knit, which of course means do whatever the other members of the family want you to do. That's not love at all, but that's how societal expectations go. So how could you see this differently so that you would feel differently? Because I'm not going to tell you not to be mad, just pointing out that it comes from expectations, but consider seeing it differently. Understand that they would have these expectations, that society views them as so normal that they would have pretty much no reason to even question them. They wouldn't. When they called and said, so what's our family discount? It didn't even occur to them that they were being selfish. It was like, well, duh, we're entitled to it. Back when I was a surgeon, you know, for 20 years, oh my goodness, I got calls and letters from people I couldn't even remember. Calling up and saying, well, you know, you're going to give me my blank, whatever it is, exam, surgery, equipment, whatever it is, free, right? It's just what people do. And so we can pretty much just expect that because people tend to engage in behaviors that benefit them. So it's a fairly normal behavior, is what I'm saying. But you don't have to go along with it. Just because your family's pressuring you doesn't mean you have to do it. And the reason that you're especially annoyed is you're afraid. You're afraid to say no. You're afraid to lose their approval. The key player in this whole thing is not them, it's you. You're terrified. I mean, it scares you, the thought of just going, discount? You've got to be kidding me. After all the training and work and blah, 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 you want a discount? No. You're afraid what they would do. And, you know, they would come up with all kinds of justifications. You know, for a parent, it would be after all I've done for you. And parents love that one. For other family members, well, but we're blood, so many reasons. So you also have to understand, you don't have to go along with the expectation, but here's the part we don't like. You get to make any choice you want, sweetie, regarding the discount, but then you have to live with the consequences of your choice. Every choice has a price. I can always tell somebody to go take a hike, stick your head in a toilet, but then I get to live with the consequences of how people are going to respond to my telling them no. That doesn't mean I have to be then trapped and always say yes. Not saying that even a little bit. In fact, I'm going to get to some suggestions here as to what you could do. I'm just saying we have to compute all that. We don't have to say yes, but if we say no, there will be a price. Am I willing to pay it? Look how much easier that is than going, oh man, they want me to do this and I don't want to do it, but I feel like I have to do it. Oh, see, all the agonizing is optional. Let's think about this clearly. So I'm not telling you which way to go, and yes, they're being demanding and all that stuff. So just consider the options. If you choose to just say no, no, there's not a family discount available, you can do that in a direct way or an indirect way. I mean, you could directly just say, I'd be happy to see you and give you a massage, but I charge everybody the same, or there's no family discount. Look how neat and clear that is. I choose everybody the same. That's easier for some people to hear than you can't have a discount. You're describing what is rather than what somebody can't have. Although keep in mind that they may still take it as can't have. So you could do it indirectly. You could say, I'd be glad to give you a discount, but and I realize there's a little cleverness to this, but you asked. You could say, I'd be glad to give you a family discount. The family discount is $65 for a massage session, when the full price of the massage may be $70. So in other words, they're getting like a, whatever that is, 7 or 8% discount. And if they say, well, that's all? Then you say, all right, $70. So you get to offer them whatever discount you want. That way, you really are giving in to their demand, but not really. So you give them a small enough discount that you don't feel like you're being used, but maybe enough that they feel like, well, okay, maybe we're getting something for free, and people, boy, just love to get something for free. Or another choice is that you simply give them the big discount. Price of the massage is normally $85, and you say, I'll give it to you for $40 or whatever it is. And realize that maybe that's the price of being in a family. I gave people lots of free exams and minor surgeries and stuff while I was operating. And I did it because, well, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed being able to give people of my talents. And it turns out that the number of free operations, exams, and so on that I gave people was, a relatively insignificant part of my overall practice. So this is only a decision only you can make. Maybe it happens rarely enough that, if they're going to come in for a massage once a year, man, is it worth fussing? It might not be worth fussing. You might say, you can have it for half. And my guess would be that, unless you might be an independent massage therapist, but if you work for an employer, you probably only make half of what you charge anyway. And so you explain that if you give a discount of 25%, it's really half of what you normally get. So it looks like 25% to them, but it's 50% to you. Explain that. That might make them feel like it's more of a bargain. Lots of different ways you can go. Little discount, no discount, big discount. Just weigh what you are willing to do and what price you're willing to pay. And then once you make that decision, you do it freely. You just say, this is what I'm willing to do, as opposed to feeling all anxious about it. You really have a right to set your own prices. Gee, there's a thought, huh? Obligation just about nearly kills us dead, you know it? see, I think we have one more. Here's somebody who says, I've been telling my 6-year-old son, don't speak so loud, don't run in the store, don't fight with your cousin. I feel like all I care about is me, not my son. Am I being unloving? Yeah, probably. Especially if you're annoyed about it. So let's look at these. I have mothers call me all the time and they say, my kids are doing this and my boys are... One mother said to me, I came home the other day and my boys were out in the backyard and they had built a fire. Now, they live in Arizona and their backyard is rocks and sand. And she wanted me to go, oh no, send them to reform school. When, you know, the truth is that that's what boys do. They're supposed to make fires. Boys have to make fires. They have to make fires. They have to have knives. And they have to play with guns. Those are 3 things boys just have to do. And so when you see them doing that stuff, then you just go, yep, they're boys. So the way that you phrased it, I need to see that question again because I got signed off somehow, is that, you know, you find yourself saying don't all the time. Like, don't run in the store. Well, why? Why not run in the store? In fact, instead of telling your son not to run in the store, what if you did this instead? What if you got to an aisle where, you know, the canned fruit aisle, and there's nobody in the aisle, so that there are not other customers, and you get in the cart, you're pushing the cart, and the kid's walking, and you say, I'll race you to the end of the aisle. Whoever gets there first gets free box of Jell-O, whatever. Make shopping fun for kids. It's no wonder they run. We make their lives hell when we go into a store. Don't talk, don't laugh, don't play, don't touch, don't nothing. Let him be a kid. After all, you said he's 6 years old. What's the problem? Now, what you do is you explain to him, now, we can run where I tell you to run. We can't run out in the open store because, and you give them the reason. We don't usually do that. We just tell them don't all the time like a machine gun. Because we don't want you to run into some, you know, 90-year-old lady, knock her down, and break her hip. Because that really happens. So we just have to be kind of aware. And so you play games with kids. We take our kids into stores and we play with them. And so we'd say, all right, now, so who's at your 3 o'clock? Who's at your, teach them positions, like the, teach, you know, fighter pilots. And say, so is it safe to run down this aisle? Sure. In fact, you might even do this. You're going down an aisle, you take a box of Jell-O, you lay it on the ground, and you go all the way to the end and you say, okay, I'm going to time how long it takes you to go get that box of Jell-O and come back. Now you're actually instructing your kid to run in the store as opposed to no. Or you say to your kid, don't speak so loud. Well, that's nuts. 6-year-old kids speak loud. I used to run a varsity scout team, Boy Scout team with 30 kids, and they'd get on a school bus and they could make you deaf. They were so loud on this bus. And I tried never to go anywhere with another adult supervisor. And every once in a while, one of the kids' parents would get on the bus and start telling them to be quiet. And I'm going, why? Who are they hurting? This is what kids do. Just think before you say no. Just like, don't fight with your cousin. Now that seems like an obvious one, right? Well, I mean, every mother should tell their kid not to fight. Wrong again. If your kid's fighting with his cousin, then what you might do at some point is to just come over and say, so tell me what you're doing. Well, we're nothing. Well, it just looked like you were mad at your cousin. Well, yeah, I was mad at him. And then you give him an invaluable lesson on anger and what it means, and on expectations, and on selfishness, and on loving as a choice instead of fighting with other people. But see, now you're just instructing the kid, giving him additional options instead of saying don't. You're being a real mother. That's what a kid needs, is a mother who loves him, accepts him, and teaches him. Every once in a blue moon, you actually have to tell a kid no, but it turns out we tell our kids no, I'd say roughly 10 times more than we really need to. They sure will appreciate you if you love and teach them. So, love being with you. This was a hoot. We're going to be back again a week from tonight on Tuesday. Look forward to seeing you. Between now and then, surprise, it's always about real love. See you then.